Health, Wellness, and the Arts is both one of my favorite events of the year and also one of the most important events that we engage in. And I say that because it reflects what ETSU does really well. And by that, I don't just mean it reflects the really outstanding arts programs that we have here, which we do. And I don't mean that it celebrates the health science programs that are excellent, which we also have. But it really celebrates the fact that we try to do things together, that we learn from each other. And over the last 3 years, I think it's fair to say that the performing artists have learned about the impact that they have on human health and wellness, and those of us on the health side have learned how important a complete life that includes the performing arts is on our own health and wellness. So I'm really excited to be here and very pleased to introduce Anita DeAngelis, the director of the Mary B. Martin School of the Arts, to introduce our performer this evening. Anita.
Thank you, Dr. Wyckoff. I'm Anita DeAngelis, and I'm the director of the Mary B. Martin School of the Arts here at ETSU, and I welcome you to the Culp Auditorium and welcome our guests who are also joining us online. It's a great honor for us to participate in the 4th Annual Evening of Health, Wellness, and the Arts. Like Dr. Wyckoff said, it's really a special opportunity for us. But I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, thanks to the College of Public Health, to the College of Medicine, to the Gold Humanism Society, to the Culp Auditorium staff who always helps us with everything we do here, to my staff at the Mary B. Martin School of the Arts and our volunteers who come out and help as well. But most of all, I'd really like to thank Jim Martin, because without Jim Martin, this kind of evening would not be happening. As many of you may know, Jim Martin's background is actually in chemistry, and he really believes in the significance of the joining of the sciences and the arts together. So it's such a special occasion for us to be able to do this. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about Robin Spielberg. Robin, who's joining us here tonight, is a remarkable individual, and I've known about her for several years, and I've been very anxious to bring her to ETSU, so finding the right combination has just been great. Robin received her undergraduate degree from New York University. She was a founding member of the Atlantic Theater Company, and I learned last night that the Atlantic Theater Company just celebrated its 30th anniversary, so a very important theater company in the United States. But what that should tell you is that not only is Robin a talented musician, but she's talented in many ways. She has performed all over the United States, a lot in Korea. She has 16 recordings, and we have several of them for sale out in the lobby. She's also an author, she's a composer, and she's a celebrity spokesperson for the American Music Therapy Association. So it's remarkable to me to find an artist who is engaged at such a high level in so many different things, and it's an absolute thrill that we have her at ETSU tonight. So if all of you would please join me in welcoming Robin to ETSU. Thank you.
Hello. Hi there. Thanks for coming out. I know it's not very nice outside. And my husband is busily shoveling 10 inches of snow. I live north of Baltimore. There's a lot of snow there. So this is what I call I like to call it an informant's. It combines some information, storytelling with performance. So before I talk too much, I thought it would be good to play the piano a little bit, since that's the black elephant in the room, right? Probably wondering, what does she do with that thing? So I got into music really early on in life. I feel fortunate about that. And for me, the piano has never really been an inanimate object. To me, the piano has been a place that I could go to, to express myself and just feel better about the world and feel better about myself. And to give you a little bit of background, I was a very, high energy child. And I have an older sister, and this gave my mother quite a bit of concern because I guess she found me difficult. I wasn't bad. I wasn't a bad kid. It just was up all the time. I didn't nap. I didn't really have a regular sleep schedule. It always seemed like I was going all day long, is how she described it. And I do remember being quite young and going to the doctor all the time and wondering why, because I felt perfectly fine. And she would go, and I guess at the time it was because of hyperactivity, and they really didn't, when I was small, they didn't really have medication for children with attention deficit or hyperactivity or kids that were, as my mother said, high-strung, like me. She would hire a babysitter to come over and chase me in the park in an effort to get me really worn out and tired so that I might get a nap and give her a break. And I remember going to the doctor, and my mother then would have a private conversation. My parents would have a private conversation with a doctor, and he put down a diagnosis in my folder. It was just a 4-letter word. It said, in capital letters, busy, underlined. Mrs. Spielberg, there's nothing wrong with your child. She's just busy. You need to keep her busy. She's very active. So keep her busy with constructive things and everything will be fine. And my parents said, but it's so strange. I mean, she really doesn't sleep. Our other child sleeps. So they had all kinds of things to try to cope with that situation and make it work in our family. I do remember being about 3 or 4 years old, and my father would set the room up with lots of toys, lots of things that I could do by myself. They were piled pretty high. And he'd say, okay, we're all going to bed now. By the time you get to the thing on the bottom, it'll be about 6 in the morning and I should be awake. But be quiet. And I would go through, there'd be Play-Doh and color forms and light bright and puzzles and things that I could do. And it was a little bit lonely, But I was taken one more time to the doctor because my mother was especially exasperated, I guess, at some point. And he did prescribe medication. This is the only time I'm going to talk about medication in this talk. It was a very short-lived experiment, for me anyway. The doctor prescribed tranquilizers, basically. And she said, you could give this to Robin when she's having dinner, and then things should calm up a bit, and then she'll calm down a bit, and you'll be able to get a good night's sleep. Well, my mom and my dad it didn't work out very well because they thought I was such a vibrant, upbeat, happy kid, and all of a sudden all the life was drained out of me and I was staring into space. But there was this whole bottle of tranquilizers. My mom didn't want them to go to waste, so she just started taking them. And problem completely solved. In any case, the first song I'm going to share with you this evening is a song that's kind of in honor of that part of my life. And it still kind of goes on. I'm still a pretty busy person, and I've embraced my busyness. And people who come into my life need to embrace it as well. So this is a song for all the busy people out there, and I simply call it This Busy Life. There is a part of the song, a very short section, that is slow. And that represents me attempting a meditation yoga class. It didn't last very long, so it's a very short part of the song. Thank you. So when I first started going to concerts, and I was a pretty young person, I grew up in Maplewood, New Jersey, which is not far from New York City. So my parents were able to take my sister and I to Broadway shows and to some concerts. And I remember being a very young person in the audience, and I would fret a little bit. Because I'd go to the concert, I feel really lucky that I was given an opportunity to go, see something, hear something, but I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. So I thought I'd give you, hopefully, a little comfort out there, just in case you were not given listening instructions before you walked in the door. There really aren't any. I remember feeling a bit guilty if my mind wandered. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be staring at the performer or listening for certain things in the music. I always felt like I was supposed to be doing something. Well, you're not. You're here. You're here, and that's enough. And if your mind wanders, good. As the composer, I can safely tell you that's the intention of my music. I hope that your mind wanders and gives you some peace and some comfort, and maybe triggers some good memories. Maybe some of the stories that I'm going to share with you today will be just a jumping off point or a starting point for some of those memories that might be elicited by listening to this music. So this next song is a celebration lullaby, if there is such a thing, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the song. The song is called Valerie. Valerie is the name of my daughter, and she had a very difficult entry into the world. Some of you, I know, came up to me during the reception and told me you saw my TEDx talk. How many have seen it? Are there a few people? Okay, a few people have seen it. So you might be familiar with Valerie's story, and for those of you who are not, or those who are watching, streaming now, you might want to later on Google Robin Spielberg TEDx, and you can see that talk. But this is a song in celebration of Valerie's miraculous recovery. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. So the reason, and I heard, thank you so much for Anita for your lovely introduction. Anita told you that I am an artist spokesperson for AMTA, which is the American Music Therapy Association. And I knew nothing about AMTA or what music therapy was until I became a mother. As I mentioned, I found music at an early age, and I was afforded piano lessons. I had violin lessons, ballet lessons, organ lessons. I was really involved with music and with theater growing up. I found it to be of a great comfort and a wonderful joy to express myself through music and to listen to music. And over the years, as I began my journey as an artist, I started out as an actor. I had big dreams of being a Broadway star. So I went to NYU. It has one of the best acting programs in the country. And for the first 10 years of my professional career, I was pursuing being an actor. And I was mildly successful at it. I did a number of plays in New York, off Broadway, and in regional theater, and worked a great deal with the Atlantic Theater Company. Fortunately, while my friends were waiting tables looking for acting jobs, I had a certain skill set at the piano. So I was able to play in piano rooms and hotel lobbies around Manhattan. And that skill set required that you know a few hundred Broadway tunes and pop songs and standards without having any music on the piano and at the piano desk, and I was able to do that. So while I was doing that, I was pursuing my acting career. And over time, the piano came more and more in the forefront because plays would come and go. A show would come up, a show would come down, but the piano was always there. And for me, you couldn't really act in my living room, but I could write a song. I could proactively pursue music no matter where I was. And that slowly came to the forefront over a number of years. And I began composing a great deal. And in 1994, I landed my first record deal, and I was signed to a small indie label in New England. And they wanted me to do 6 recordings over a 3-year period. And so I said, well, I thought to myself, I'll take a break from auditioning for a while, and I'll see where this goes and how it lands. And I started composing music like the music you just heard. And it wasn't unusual for people to come up to me and tell me that the music made them feel good, all right? Or they liked a particular song, or it reminded them of something, of their girlfriend, of a time when they were young. And I would get letters, and as the internet generation came around, I started getting sort of letters. I would get emails. But it wasn't until I became a mother that I really gave any thought at all to the depth of music and the transformative power of music. And what it means to us as human beings, as individuals, how it can have such a profound effect. And that's what I want to share a little bit with you today, because this is a program, lecture series after all, about health and wellness. And music is very much tied into our wellness. Now, Valerie, our daughter, was born a micropreemie. For those of you who don't know, that's prior to a certain amount of weeks gestation. Women are pregnant between 39 and 41 weeks. That's considered average, that a pregnancy is on the average of 40 weeks in duration, or 9 months. Valerie was born at 23 weeks, 5 days. I was pregnant with twins, and I went into what they call premature labor, and they were able to hold it off for about 11 days with some pretty heavy-duty drugs. All I could do was blink my eyelashes. Basically, it was uncomfortable, but I was kind of happy being paralyzed like that, because I knew contractions wouldn't happen and the babies would stay in, and the longer they stayed in, the safer everything would be. But after day 11, it became obvious there was one baby was in a great deal of distress. And the doctors did not think that either one would survive. But Valerie happened to make it through the night. She was given just a 10% chance of making it through the night, but she made it through the night. We're not sure exactly how, but she did. And there were a lot of issues when you have a being that small. So really, what the doctors and neonatologists are doing is that they're trying to help human life develop and grow outside the womb at that point. I hesitate to really say she was a baby. She really was a fetus growing outside the womb in the hospital setting. She was very small. The birth certificate says that she weighed 17 ounces, which is 1 pound, 1 ounce. Reality, when they weighed her, she weighed 12 ounces. But the hospital had a policy of only taking heroic measures if the babies were a certain weight. So we had a very kind nurse. I wish I knew where she was so I could thank her. But I do thank her every day in my heart. She put her thumb on the scale to give Valerie a little bit more weight. And so that's why her birth certificate says 17 ounces. Well, she made it through the night and the next night and the night after that, and it was a long journey. Valerie was in the neonatal intensive care unit for 4 long months. And I know we have a pediatric cardiologist in the audience tonight who I was talking to. A lot of babies, you might not know this, but when you're born and the baby has that first cry, there's a reason for that. That first cry closes a valve in your heart, around your heart, and allows you to have blood pressure. So if a baby doesn't have that first cry, that valve will be open, and that's not good. That needs to be surgically repaired. But because she was so small, she was smaller than the size of a little kitten, they weren't able to do the surgery because they couldn't find instruments small enough to do the work. They couldn't even use the instruments they use in veterinary hospitals for little animals. So we were in a waiting game, and she was on what they call an oscillating ventilator, which breathed for her for quite some time. Now, this was all very scary. I know things have changed quite a bit with science and medicine and the environment of the neonatal intensive care unit, but I am describing my personal experience from 16 years ago. And it was, the NICU was not what I expected it to be. I'm not sure what I expected. But when you think about fragile, tiny babies that are clinging to life, you would imagine that they might be in a room with this kind of lighting, kind of warm light. It might be quiet because you want to comfort them and allow them to heal. But it wasn't like that. It was hustling and bustling, and it was loud, it was noisy, it was bright 24/7, fluorescent lights, and it had the energy of an ER because there was a lot of urgency in the air. And I found that very upsetting. I guess my maternal instinct started to kick in. I wanted to cuddle her, I wanted to rock her. I couldn't hold her. Her skin was too fragile to be touched. So she was wrapped in saran wrap, you can imagine. A friend of mine brought a Beanie Baby to the hospital. Do you remember those? They're about this big. It was a kitten, and it was bigger than my baby. So she was, when she was able to wear clothes, she wore the Beanie Baby clothes. And as you could see, life was quite fragile. So I didn't know what to do with that. I couldn't do anything. There were doctors doing their jobs and nurses doing their jobs. And all I could do was sit and wait and pray and hope. And then I thought of something. I thought, well, the whole time I was pregnant, even though it wasn't long enough, I played piano. And I wonder, that made me feel better. I wonder if she heard that. I wonder if I brought music, if I could play for her. I wonder if that would make it better in here. There's a lot of beeping. Medications run out and there'd be an alarm or beeping. I've heard these things have changed now, that instead of beeping by the incubator, the nurse can wear like something next to her watch, and a buzzer might just vibrate or go off, letting her know that this child needs the IV changed. So things have changed over the years, but at this time, it was darn loud in there. And I would almost call it noise pollution. So I asked permission, can I bring a few CDs and a little portable CD player and just have it over here while I sit? My husband would read, I would do needlepoint, we'd sing to the baby, we'd talk to her, we'd pray. And they said, sure. At the time, I didn't know this, but they kind of written her off. They didn't think that she was going to live very long, so they thought, what harm could it do? If the parents want to bring some music, okay. So we brought some recordings of mine, my early recordings, Heel of the Hand, which people told me they were listening to while getting a massage. It was played a lot in elevators and dentist's office. I heard people were kind of relaxing to that music, so I brought that in. It was holiday time. I brought in a holiday CD. Well, the nurses who really know the babies best of all because they're with them all the time. One nurse in particular, her name was Doreen. She said, "Oh, Valerie really likes your music." And I looked up at her and I said, "How could you tell?" I mean, this was kind of a pathetic thing to say, I thought, because the baby's intubated and full of wires and, pretty unpleasant to kind of see all of that. And she said, "Well, I could tell because every time your music is on, her blood pressure's a little bit better and her breathing is better and her heart rate is better. Her oxygen saturation levels increase." I said, "What?" And then she repeated that. She goes, "Yeah, and the baby next to her. That baby likes it too." And then she would move on. Now, if this had just happened once or twice or 10 times, I might just shrug. But we were in the NICU for 4 long months. And whenever my music was on, this is what happened. I couldn't understand it. I could not wrap my head around it. I understand how someone can listen to a song on the radio while they're driving. Say you're a girl or a guy and you just broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend and you feel sad and this love song comes on and it makes you feel sad. Or you just lost someone and then you hear Celine Dion singing "My Heart Will Go On" and you fall to pieces. Or you're ready to go for a run and you put on some music to get you up and going. Right? Something really upbeat and fabulous to make you feel. I know how music affects us, but this was a fetus growing outside the womb. This was a baby that was 25, 26, 27, 28 weeks on in life. A baby can't have preference to music. There's nothing to compare this song to another song. How could the sound have this very real physical and medical effect? How could that possibly be? I was so troubled by this. I was thrilled and troubled by it. I did what we do now in the modern age. I started looking to the internet, looking for some answers. That is where I stumbled across the work of a doctor named Dr. Jane Stanley. Dr. Jane Stanley was doing some remarkable studies at the University of Florida in Tallahassee. And in fact, spent 21 years of her, well now I don't know how many, probably a lot more, but at that time, over 20 years of her professional career, studying one thing, one very specific thing. And that thing was the effect of music on the premature infant. I felt like I had hit the jackpot. I read her studies, some of them were a little over my head, but I read her studies, and it basically confirmed everything that I'm telling you, that yes, music does have a real, profound, physical and emotional effect on human beings. Now, my focus, as well as Dr. Stanley's focus, of course, at that time, were babies, because that was my experience, that was what I was going through. But as Valerie began to get stronger and grew a little older, we found that music had meaning in other ways that I never thought imaginable. Like many babies that are born prematurely, Valerie had a number of delays. Some of them developmental delays, like, walking a little later or being able to put sentences together later than usual. Her eye-hand motor coordination was not quite in line. She wanted to take piano lessons really badly, but I put it off a little bit because I wanted her to succeed, and her dexterity wasn't quite there yet. Took her a little while to ride a bike. A lot of 7- and 8-year-olds are riding their bikes without training wheels. That happened at age 12. So we had these kind of delays, but the most disturbing of all was memory. If we don't have our memory, who are we? We are our memories. Our memories is our story, is our narrative of our lives. And her long-term memory was okay, but that little the short-term memory was somewhat fragile as a result of a brain bleed that she had early on that led to some seizure activity. Not in a very extreme way, but she would have what they called unspecific seizure disorder. It's a type of epilepsy. She might have a seizure that lasts about 4 seconds. 4 seconds might not seem like a long time, but it's this. And if you miss 4 seconds of an instruction, or 4 seconds of someone telling you something important, you could miss a vital part of the instruction or a vital part of the conversation. You might miss the punchline to a joke. You might miss the reference. And so her memory was somewhat on the fragile side. And I remember when she started getting schoolwork, finally getting homework, in 3rd grade, 4th grade, it was very frustrating to take the material she was learning and be able to put it into long-term memory. It took a long time and many, many, many repetitions. Well, because of the research that I did and my relationship with AMTA, I did a little bit of more research. We had a music therapist come to the school and give her an evaluation and talk to me a bit about it, and some strategies that we might be able to do to help Valerie with her memory. And I wanted to share that with you because I still think that here on the college level, it might be useful. I don't know anyone who learned the 26 letters of the alphabet just by reciting the list of letters. We learn the song. And music is one of the last things that goes. You can talk to people who are in their late 90s, and they might not remember things from the past, but they'll remember their wedding song or a church hymn or the words to Home on the Range. And so what I started doing with Valerie is that I started taking her science curriculum, some of the history information. We started composing little songs. And I remember one in particular, I talked about it in the TEDx talk. She was taking a class. Everyone had to be vaccinated, right, to go to school. And the question on the test was, what is a vaccine? The answer was that the teacher wanted the student to reply with was, a vaccine is a shot the doctor gives you so the germs don't get you sick. And she would look at that, and then I'd say, what is a vaccine? And she was blank. Or we might go over it again, and I'd say, what is a vaccine? And she'd say, it's a shot. I'm like, it's a shot for what? I don't know. That was kind of sad. And we'd go over and over it. And just sitting there at the kitchen counter on our stools, a vaccine is a shot the doctor gives you so the germs don't get you sick. A vaccine is a shot the doctor gives you so the germs don't get you sick. Come on, Val, sing it with me. And she did. A vaccine is a shot the doctor gives you so the germs don't get you sick. That was easy and that was done. Wow. Okay, could it be that easy? A low-pressure system is a place where air rises and pushes against the earth with less pressure, All right? So we went through geology, we went through erosion, we went through all kinds of things with this music, and my daughter went from being a C/D student to an A student. And it was such a pleasure to have parent-teacher conferences and have the teacher say, wow, what a change. She's not nervous at all. She takes a test and she's just singing along while she takes her test. She's singing while she's doing her test. And I just smiled to myself, knowing I had this little secret. But it really shouldn't have been a secret. I wanted to tell all of the teachers who had students with disabilities, all of the teachers who had students who were struggling or developmental delay or had problem with memory, there's work to be done here, don't you think? So fortunately, this has now come around because when I first started advocating for music therapy, people would say, "What's music therapy?" And I'd say, because I wanted to make sure I had it right, music therapy is a clinical and evidence-based use of music interventions to accomplish individualized goals within a therapeutic relationship by a credentialed professional who has completed an approved music therapy program. It's a health service similar to occupational therapy and physical therapy, and consists of using music therapeutically to address physical, psychological, cognitive, and/or social functioning for patients of all ages. And because music therapy is a powerful and non-evasive medium, outcomes that are unique are possible. In addition to its applications with hospital patients, music therapy is used successfully with persons of all ages and disabilities. And even with that definition, it wasn't until I started meeting music therapists who worked in a variety of medical settings that I began to learn what they really do. So here we go. I was introduced through the NICU, music therapy in premature infants. I mentioned music with memory, with students with disabilities. Music in Alzheimer's patients. Okay, now music, I'm not saying that music cures Alzheimer's. I don't want you to come away with that, all right? But Alzheimer's is a very difficult and very disturbing disease, not just for the patient, but for the people who love the individual with the disease. It creates a lot of anxiety. Someone moving from one room to another room or forgetting where they were, there's a feeling of upset. Well, music, because music does not work in just one part of our brain. You might hear people having a stroke and they can't speak any longer, have to relearn to speak, or they can't walk, or one side of their body is affected and they have to have physical therapy to walk. Music uses all of our brain. So it's the last thing to go. It's when you're introducing familiar songs, familiar melodies and tunes to someone with Alzheimer's, it just smooths the way and eases that person and gives them something familiar to hold on to and can make things a whole lot more pleasant. Another thing that I discovered, which I thought was fascinating, and Valerie was someone who actually benefited from this, is music and pain management. I don't know about you, but I'm afraid to go to the dentist, and I admit it. But when I go to the dentist, I put on my iPod, or I have my iPhone now, and I have my headphones on. Mostly because I don't like the sound. I don't like the sounds of drill or the cleaning thing. I don't like any of that sound. But if there's work being done, my brain is busy being distracted with the music and the sound that I'm hearing. And as a result, I'll need less Novocaine. And that's not just a psychological trick. That's a medical fact. That people who are, that engage with music therapists do need less pain medication when they come out of surgery. In addition, another study has shown that music is not only good for the completely unconscious patient, that really is something that astounds me, but you could be completely unconscious, and if there is pleasant, what you perceive as pleasant music playing in the OR, your vital signs will improve and you will recover faster, but it's better for the surgeon as well. Surgeons actually do better and have better focus. Some of you might have heard of something called the Mozart effect. How many people have heard that? Okay, and just a few of you. That was something in the news a long time ago, and some people really capitalized on it in a very commercial way by distorting some of the studies. But the basic study of the Mozart effect was that when Mozart's music was playing and students were solving math problems, they were able to solve them more accurately and more efficiently. So faster and with more accuracy. A few people jumped on that bandwagon and started to sell Mozart music packaged for babies and for little kids, saying, listen to this and your kid will be super smart. But that really wasn't the result of the study, because as soon as the music stopped playing, the effect was over. It did not have a long-lasting effect. The idea was that while that particular music was on, for some reason, it enhanced mathematical skill just a little bit. And the studies are still coming in, which I find quite wonderful. I want to share with you a piece of music, something that Valerie listened to while she was there in the NICU. And perhaps while I play it for you, feel free. I know that university life is wonderful and vibrant, but sometimes stressful too. There's a lot going on, a lot to be prepared for, a lot of plates that are spinning in the air, a lot of classes, a lot of demands being made of you in a lot of ways. So I hope that you'll take the next couple of minutes to yourself. And while you listen to the song, feel free even to close your eyes and let yourself drift a bit. Take your own pulse of where you are and work to center yourself. This is a lullaby, and it's called Amy's Lullaby. Thank you. I notice a quieting in the applause. Everyone's still awake? That's good. When I first started recording, it was just the end of the era where they made cassettes. Is anyone out there not know what a cassette is? Okay, because we had these cassettes, and so there was side one and side two, and you could buy CDs, but the CDs were kind of new. And I had a gentleman come up to me once after a show, and he said, "I love your Heel of the Hand cassette. It's great. I love side one. Side one is just, it's amazing. It's fantastic." And I'm thinking to myself, it's really nice, but I wonder why he doesn't like side two. And he's going on and on. He's like, side one, that's just like the best music I've ever heard. I'm so relaxed. It's really wonderful. And I couldn't help myself. I said, well, sir, are you saying you don't like side two? You just like side one better? Or he goes, oh, well, I've never heard side two. I'm completely asleep by the time side one is over. He said, he saw my face. He goes, don't get me wrong. That's not an insult. I've had insomnia for years. And your music, who knew? It cured me. Put him right out. So, music has all kinds of uses. I had a couple come up to me. These two women come up to me after a show I had done in Maryland. This is very memorable for me because the oddity of it. And I was signing CDs, and she asked me to sign a CD to John. So I said, okay. So I'm signing the CD to John, all the best, Robin Spielberg. And she said, John's dead. I'm like, okay, you still want me to sign the CD? She goes, yes, sign it to John because you always loved my music, Robin Spielberg. I'm like, oh gosh, that's so touching, that's so sad. And the woman she was with said, how do you know that John liked her music? And I just do. Well, how do you know? He wasn't able to tell you. And she says, well, I do. He did tell me. Oh, really? How did he tell you? Well, whenever I had Robin's music on in the barn, he'd go like this. Because John was a horse. I was kind of happy to hear that a horse really liked my music. Just felt that I made it somehow, But we all have our own uses, and I know that for me, people often ask about my compositions or where I get ideas. We all have a way of making sense of our lives and navigating our way through the world. And there are so many ways now to preserve our memories. My daughter likes to use Snapchat and Instagram. A lot of the mommies out there love scrapbooking. You come out with these beautiful scrapbooks of, favorite times of your life, and they kind of tell a story in a very lovely way. And some people paint, some people like to keep a journal or a diary. And for me, it's this. If I meet a person that has a very big impact on my life, or, have a certain experience or a lovely day I want to remember, or a walk that I took, or a feeling that I had, or an event that happened, and I want to cement that in my mind. The best way for me to do that is to add to my musical diary, and that's by creating a composition. So when you look at my recordings, they are just parts of my life, in time. I just wanted to pause for a moment and see if anyone in the audience had any questions about anything I said or something you want to know more about. Anybody? Okay. Yes?
Could you tell us what Valerie is doing today?
Valerie, yes. Well, Valerie is, when she gets upset, she's still very petite, and when she gets upset about her size, I say, how many people can say they're 82 times their birth weight and still underweight? Valerie's 82 pounds and about 5 feet tall, and she's a sophomore in high school. She's got her learner's permit to drive, and she's very musical. She took piano lessons for quite some time, and she got so good at it that the repertoire then required an enormous amount of time. So she put the pause on that and is focusing more on marimba and xylophone and vibes. So she plays vibes in the jazz band, and she's in marching band. In the part that doesn't march, it's the pit. So she's very tiny, just in that big instrument. And she does indoor drumline, and they compete on Saturdays. She just got back from Orlando. Our marching band won second place in their division, I guess, in the state for marching, and they, as a result, went to Orlando and marched in the parade and took a master class. And she does very well. She does well in subjects I would never guess. She did very well in physics and chemistry, and she struggles with some what I look at as something that could be quite simple. She will answer sometimes a question, but it's not the question that was asked. So she needs help deciphering and understanding what the questions are. Sometimes they have to be repeated, or instead of read to her, or interpreted or reworded, and sometimes repeated. She's got a number of really great friends who kind of understand that little quirkiness and help her along. But as time goes on, I really realize that everyone is unique in their own way and has little areas of their life where they need a little help. But she's doing really great. Now, she's toured with me a little bit. I have a trio, and she's joined the trio as a quartet. It's piano, guitar, cello, fiddle, and she adds percussion to that when she can, which is really quite delightful. Anybody else? Back there? No? Yes? I thought I saw somebody. Go ahead and say it, because it's kind of dark. Yes. Yeah, I know all of those artists. I have performed with there's a radio station called solopianoradio.com, and it's called the Whisperings Artists. It's a number of what you call new age pianists. We do neoclassical, I call my neoclassical music. Some are more on the new age bent, and often there are concerts together, and I've worked with a number of different artists over the years in live performance, which is really a fun thing to do. Anyone else? Yes. I didn't hear that. Have I worked with? Sorry, what did you say? Have you worked with any researchers? Oh, with researchers. I haven't, except for the fact that Valerie goes to Johns Hopkins, where she is followed up by a neurologist there, and she's part of a research study. So they are very well aware of not just Valerie and how she's come along, because she really has debunked a lot of the predictions of these doctors who were really, stars in their field. One of the funniest things I was told, I think it's funny, is that they looked at her, she's a 3.96 grade point average, and they said, Valerie performs better than her abilities. I kind of cocked my head. I said, I don't understand that sentence. So what they see as far as her scores and what her brain should be able to do, that she could do beyond that. And that's another thing I want to address. I don't know how most of you probably had to take ACT or SATs to go to school. Is that true? Tests are important. And they're important because they let your teachers know what you've learned and how the teacher did in teaching it to you. Did you understand the material? Did you absorb it? Are you able to, what did you walk away with from this class? It's some kind of measure. But a test does not measure how kind you are, how compassionate you are, your emotional IQ, your ability to love, your ability to care, your potential to change the world for the better. None of these tests mean anything when it comes to that. You can have straight D's and be a stellar human being. So we're in a school environment now, so the grades are important. And I understand that. And I understand that there's a desire to do well in this setting. But when you leave this setting, you're not going to be graded. You're going to be judged for your humanity and how you are in the world. And I'm at this crossroads now as a mother because my child will soon be taking the SATs and going through the college admissions process and competing with all the individuals out there where we're looking at these certain measurements. And I have to be careful that I don't put my own expectations and my own agenda on her. Yeah, she does well in school, but it's a struggle, and it's really hard. I personally think that her individual merits are in being a fantastic human being. And I wouldn't be surprised if she herself ended up in music therapy or in caregiving or in a health field or in public health. That finding your place in the world is extremely important and not always able to be measured by some kind of test. Maybe I went off topic a little bit there. I hope you'll forgive me. But I do remember feeling the stress of the college environment and the importance of doing well. And then when I left, I'm like, what do you mean no grades? You know, you work really hard, you get this 4.0, and this means something. But it doesn't, in life, we don't get those. We don't get those. Anyone else? Yes? She asked me at what age did I begin playing piano. I don't really have a memory of not playing, which I know is very bizarre. We had this little tiny organ. It was about two and a half octaves. My mother would sing in the kitchen, and I would try to accompany her and hear songs on the radio and reach up and figure out songs. But I took piano lessons starting at age 7. Is when I started playing, and I had 4 different teachers at different times. They all had made their indelible mark. Every teacher has their own thing that they bring to the table. Some people go their whole lives and have one teacher, but I had 4 that were all very different and affected me in very deep ways. Affected my playing. Anyone else? All right, I'll give you another chance to ask questions. Before we close, I wanted to share one more thing with you. It involves reading. And then a final song. So you might have noticed in the lobby there's a book that I wrote. It's called Naked on the Bench, My Adventures in Pianoland. A lot of people giggle about the title. But the truth is, if you're going to be a musician, a professional musician on the stage, there's a certain amount of vulnerability that's a requirement of the job. And so that's where the naked part comes. But, I say but, I'm not going to read from this part, but there is a chapter in the book where I talk about a certain tour that I took in the state of Montana. And while I was on tour in Montana, the very last stop was a resort in Idaho. And it happened to have been a clothing optional resort. Yeah. And the presenter asked, do you want to play naked? Because you can. I said, no, it's okay. I think I'll keep my clothes on. That's the title of the chapter. I think I'll keep my clothes on. I'm naked enough up here. But the audience was naked, except some people wore baseball caps and some people wore socks. It's all nook. You can't make this stuff up. Clothing optional resort for very lazy people who only want to pack a toothbrush on vacation. But there are some interesting books, some interesting places you can go. Musictherapy.org is the website for the American Music Therapy Association. There you will find a list of accredited programs throughout the United States for if you're interested in becoming a music therapist. A lot of people say, gosh, I really like music a lot, but I want to go into health, I want to go into medicine. Well, this is pretty terrific because that's a field where someone's love for music and someone's love for medicine are married, and you can do both. You know, I had no idea that even existed when I was going to college. So that's pretty remarkable. Also on that website, you can look up some research and see some studies and what music therapists are doing and where they are. There's even a tab, how to find a music therapist. So if you have a loved one who might be in need or might benefit from having a music therapist as part of their medical treatment, it's on the website. And the good news is that, you know, in pretty recent months, music therapy is being reimbursed by insurance companies. Pretty wonderful stuff. And that's only happening because when you have a music therapist, the healthcare costs go way, way, way down, and people are discharged from the hospital sooner with less medication and fewer interventions. I know one specific thing that really delayed Valerie's exit from the NICU was babies are born knowing how to suck. That's what they need to do to get their nutrition, right? Well, when they're born before a certain amount of weeks, like Valerie was, in that early gestation, they're not able to suck, swallow, and breathe. It's very disturbing to watch. These babies are constantly choking, and they're patting them on the back, so they're drinking from the bottle, and I pumped, mommy's milk into this bottle, and she's trying to do it, and she's breathing it in. You ever breathe in water? You're laughing so hard, and you breathe in the water, and you cough and cough. It's like that. And they can't quite manage it. Well, they can't go home until they can coordinate sucking, swallowing, and breathing. Well, Dr. Stanley came up with this device. It took years and years and years to get it to market. It's a very long story as to why, but it's being used in NICUs. And, gosh, I forgot what it's called. Do you remember what it's called? Have you heard about it? It's a pacifier, but it's more than that. When the baby sucks on the pacifier, music plays. And when the baby stops sucking on the pacifier, the music stops. By using this device, babies learn how to suck within 48 hours and then can go home. It took Valerie 2 weeks. If only we had that. Oh, I remember what it's called. It's called the PAL system. And now it's finally being manufactured and sent out to hospitals. So as early, those little babies, they suck on that and they're rewarded with the music, and that's how they learn to be able to take nutrition from their bottles. It's pretty amazing stuff. So this is a chapter from the book, and it is toward the end, but this is not really a book that necessarily has a very important beginning, middle, or end. You can kind of skip around the chapters. But I think I want to share it with you because it's about an experience I had that I think is very forming, if you will. I'm going to use these because I'm old. Sigh. When I was an NYU student studying drama for the Atlantic Theater Company, playwright John Guare came up to Vermont to teach a master class. He promised at the start of his lecture that he would tell us the secret to success. I couldn't wait. We listened respectfully as he told us about the trials and tribulations of playwriting, getting plays produced, staying true to one's art, the history of his Lighty Breeze trilogy. At the very end of the class, he told us the big secret, the one we were all waiting for. It was the secret to getting where we all wanted to go, the top. He was sitting down on a gray aluminum folding chair at the front of the classroom. He leaned forward in his chair. He looked each of us in the eye before saying the 3 words that were supposed to change our lives. He had a glint in his eye. And then he revealed the big secret. He said, "You're already there." That was it? That was the climax of the lecture? What a joke. He couldn't possibly mean that sitting in this hot classroom in August at Vermont College was making it. I wanted to know how to get parts, how to win the hearts and minds of casting directors, how to make it on Broadway. My fellow classmates looked equally confused. We were students. We had far to go. We were nowhere near where we wanted to be. I eventually got what Guare was talking about a few decades later. I bet the rest of the class eventually did too. With all the attention we were paying to going, doing, achieving, we were missing where we were at the moment. That, in and of itself, was success to be celebrated. In our world, the goalposts were constantly moving and being set further and further away. And the irony was, we were the ones doing the moving. Once we achieved something like forming the company or getting a play of ours produced off Broadway or winning a coveted role, there was another goal to achieve that would surely make us truly successful. But then that next thing would come. It meant little, if anything, and we were on to the next thing. I remember being in a dressing room of an off-Broadway play I was in. A girl in her early 20s, like me, was telling me of her longing for a big break. "You're so lucky," she said. You got into the Atlantic Theater Company. Well, no, not exactly, I said. I was in a class that started the Atlantic Theater Company, and the company formed out of a few very unique workshops. There's nothing mysterious about it. You could start a company, too. That's what I mean, she insisted. You didn't even have to audition. If only I could get into a good company or land that national commercial I just auditioned for, everything would change, she bemoaned. But the commercial did come, and nothing changed. The same is true for the Grammy chasers, of which I was one, and the fame seekers I've encountered at recording studios, green rooms, audition waiting rooms, rehearsal studios, and internet listservs. I've heard the oddest of goals expressed in these settings. If musicians and artists were to stand in their truth, a phrase I heard from Susie Orman, a finance wizard, we would all see that artists, all they really want to do is connect. I don't know anyone in the arts who doesn't long for peer recognition and industry validation. That's what award ceremonies and golden trophies are all about. But it's clear to me that these kind of accolades have to be achieved as a byproduct of truthful, day-to-day living in one's art. Winning a trophy or becoming famous as a standalone goal is an empty wish and unlikely to leave any artist feeling fulfilled for long if attained without connectedness. I have known many musicians who have spent years building a network of industry voters instead of audiences, composers who have worked on image more than content, independent musicians spending more time pursuing a review in a prestigious publication instead of practicing their instruments, and they don't seem very happy. While on tour in rural Missouri, I was given the opportunity to play in a retirement home. I was scheduled to perform a public concert that same evening. I was newly appointed as an artist spokesperson for the American Music Therapy Association. I was happy to have a chance to play the piano. The particular event in the evening was for people who could go to a concert, and this event was for people who couldn't get to the concert hall that night. It seemed like a nice thing to do. As soon as I walked into the building, I was accosted by a terrible odor. It was the odor of the sick and neglected. The retirement home wasn't really a retirement home. It turned out to be a rundown nursing facility of the worst kind. State-run, experienced budget cuts year after year, and the residents there rarely had visitors. Never mind concert artists come to entertain them. The director was a middle-aged woman who looked tired and overworked, and she led me to an out-of-tune, upright piano, her sensible black shoes clicking as she walked ahead of me on the white linoleum floor. The piano looked rather pathetic. It was so little in that big space. But I knew it would be there on that bench where I could make my escape from the sadness that was sweeping over me. I sat down, and I put my bags down to the side of the piano, and I played a few chords. It was out of tune, but the action, I was happy to discover, was in pretty good shape. Old people on stretchers and wheelchairs were rolled into the humid and dank all-purpose room to hear me play. A microphone had been set up for me to tell my stories, and I said, "Hello, how's everyone today?" There was no response, but I already knew the answer to my stupid question. I managed to continue. "My name is Robin Spielberg, and I hope you will enjoy the music you're about to hear." Awkward silence. No applause. I began to play. I looked down at my watch. Only 3 minutes had passed, 57 more to go. I couldn't wait to get back in my rental car and get back to my climate-controlled hotel room and forget about this morning. But as soon as my hands were on the keys, I began to drift into the music my parents taught me. Music from yesteryear. That's what this occasion called for. Moon River, As Time Goes By. Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, Frankie and Johnny, On the Sunny Side of the Street, On Top of Old Smoky, Stormy Weather, Over the Rainbow. They were fun to remember and fun to play. No one applauded after my first song, so I made a quick decision not to stop, to just thread the songs together continuously, like I did at my hotel gig days. I moved the mic stand away to the side. Funny, I planned on talking about music therapy, about my grandparents, about their connection to music. In fact, I was thinking of games I could play with the residents, like Name That Tune. Not today. No games here today. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see a few feet tapping and a few hands moving to the music, but little else. Didn't get worse than this, I thought to myself. Just a day ago, I was feeling on top of the world, packing to go on tour, and now look at me. Look at this pathetic gig. When the hour was up, I closed the piano lid with a sigh. It was a good hour of practice. The woman who had escorted me in had gone, so there was no one to say goodbye to. Nurses appeared to roll the residents away, back to hallways, physical therapy, televisions, lunch trays. I gathered my things and found the way from which I came. I was walking down the hall to the nursing room lobby, and then, excuse me, Miss Spielberg? A nurse was running down the hall after me. Maybe I forgot something, my purse. Hi, Miss Spielberg, I wanted to thank you so much for coming. It meant so much to the residents. They loved it. Really? No offense, but how could you tell? Oh my, you don't know? Your music was so beautiful and so soulful. I could feel the spirits in the room lifting. Couldn't you? No, not really. I guess I wasn't in tune. You know, there was some distance between the piano and the residents because of the wheelchairs and the stretchers. The setting was a little different for me. I couldn't really tell if anyone was listening. Oh, they were listening all right. Did you know that Mr. Larson actually had a big breakthrough during your performance? Who's Mr. Larson? He was in the wheelchair to your left, the one with the full head of white hair. Oh, yeah, I did notice him. He was enjoying Moon River, I think. That's right. But what you didn't know, what you couldn't know, is that Mr. Larson has not spoken in 6 months. Not a word. The nurse's eyes began to turn red and tear up. She continued, he was such a sweet man, always joking and always kidding with the staff, but his wife died a little while back, and he became very low, very depressed. And there he was just now, listening to you and singing along to Moon River. It's amazing, a miracle, really. He was tapping his foot, too. Did you see? The director wasn't here to show you out because she went to call his family to give them the news. Well, I have to get back to my station. I just wanted to thank you. The nameless nurse angel hugged me. I couldn't return the embrace. My arms were weighed down at my sides with the tote bags filled with the fake books and the CDs I thought I would sell. I just stood there with my arms pulled downward by the weight of the books. The nurse turned on her heels and left me there alone in the hallway, aghast. Everything I had thought I had just experienced was not true. They had been listening. It had meant something, my being there. Applause or lack of it was irrelevant. Success here could not be measured in applause or a standing ovation or a paycheck. Those were the only tools of measurement I had when it came to performance. In fact, the greatest success story of my life thus far had just been achieved. A stranger named Mr. Larson sang along to Moon River and broke his 6-month and self-imposed isolation. He came back. He came back even for just a short while. He came back to the world of the living because he heard someone play a song that meant something to him, that connected with him. It made him feel alive again. I was already there. So I hope you enjoyed that little story. And I'm going to leave you now with a song that I didn't write, but is my #1 selling song on iTunes and most listened to on Pandora, and has made me a bona fide piano star in South Korea. The song was used on a very popular TV show there. I'm sure you've heard of it. Gyol Yanga, very popular show. It translates to a winter sonata, and it's my variation on the Pachelbel canon in D. I hope you'll linger a little afterward and say hello. I do have CDs and songbooks and a brand new recording coming out next month, and a chance to win is out there in the lobby. Thank you very much, especially thank you to Anita and to Randy and to Christine and to Scott and to Heidi and to Jerry for letting me take over her class today. A round of applause for all the people who helped put this evening together. And to all of you who've braved the elements to come out and hear what I had to say. I hope you enjoyed it.